Let's imagine this moment your phone lights up and suddenly that familiar name appears. The person who once made you feel seen, then slowly drifted away, is now back with a message. Maybe it's something simple, "Hey, how have you been?" Or a casual, "Saw something that reminded me of you." And right now, your heart skips. You start to wonder, what does this mean? Are they missing me? Are they finally ready? But here's the truth. Before you even think about replying, you need to take your power back. This isn't about what they want, it's about what you deserve. When someone who pulled away suddenly reappears, it's easy to romanticize the past. But don't forget, people who avoid intimacy often come back when they feel safe again, not necessarily when they've changed. Sometimes they miss your warmth, your energy, your understanding, but not the commitment. That's why you can't respond from emotion. You have to respond from self-respect. So take a breath, don't rush. You don't owe anyone immediate access just because they remembered your name. The message they sent doesn't automatically earn a response. Your attention is a privilege, not a right. If you do respond, do it from a grounded place. Keep it brief, kind, but firm. You're not trying to rekindle something. You're demonstrating that you've grown. Something as simple as, "Hey, hope you're doing well. I've been good, thanks," is enough. No chasing, no deep dives, no nostalgia. Because when someone avoids closeness and you respond with strength and calm, it unsettles the old dynamic. You're showing them you're no longer waiting. You're not a chapter they can reopen when life feels lonely. You're the author of your own story now. Here's the secret. Sometimes your silence will say more than any perfectly crafted reply. If their message doesn't offer clarity, accountability, or genuine interest, you have every right to protect your peace. You don't need to reward uncertainty with your attention. This moment isn't about whether they'll stay, it's about whether you will keep your standards. You've learned too much, healed too deeply, to go back to confusion disguised as connection. So, whether you reply or not, make sure your response honors your worth. Because love doesn't return through a message, it returns through consistent action. Until you see that, your best move might just be to keep moving forward. When your avoidant ex suddenly reaches out, the first wave that hits you is emotional, the surprise, the rush of memories, the flicker of hope that maybe things could be different this time. But that first wave is exactly where most people lose their balance. They react before they reflect. They respond from the wound, not from wisdom. To truly reclaim your power, you need to pause and ask yourself one simple question. What part of me wants to reply the healed version or the hurt one? Because how you respond now will either reinforce your growth or reopen the door to an old pattern. Responding from emotion is easy. It's what happens when you let the excitement of hearing from them override the lessons you've learned. Your heart races, your mind starts spinning stories. Maybe they miss you, maybe they've changed, maybe this is your moment. But emotion can be a trickster. It makes you interpret crumbs as effort, attention as affection, and curiosity as commitment. Power, on the other hand, asks for patience. It tells you to slow down and look beyond the words. What is this message really saying? Is it an attempt to reconnect or just a fleeting moment of comfort? Seeking on their part, when you respond from power, you're not cold, you're clear. You don't ignore your feelings, but you don't let them run the show. You recognize that your emotions are real, yet they're not instructions. You take time to process the impact of their message before deciding whether it deserves your energy. You remember that healing has given you the ability to choose differently this time. And sometimes that choice is simply not engaging until you're certain you can do so from a place of strength, not attachment. An avoidant ex often reaches out not because they're ready to rebuild, but because they're feeling lonely, guilty, or nostalgic. They may crave the familiarity of your presence without being ready to offer consistency. If you let emotion take over, you might read too deeply into a simple text. But when you stand in your power, you no longer mistake their curiosity for genuine care. You assess their actions, not just their words. You ask yourself if this outreach aligns with the version of you who has grown beyond uncertainty and emotional inconsistency. Power also means setting the tone. You don't rush to reply, you decide if replying even serves your peace. You don't fall into the rhythm they set, you move to your own. The moment you reclaim that control, everything shifts. They no longer see someone waiting to be chosen, they see someone who knows their worth. And that energy, more than any witty or thoughtful reply, communicates everything. It tells them that your value doesn't depend on their validation. Ultimately, responding from power means choosing self-respect over temporary comfort. It's understanding that your peace is priceless, and no message, no matter how unexpected, is worth trading it for. When someone who once walked away decides to reach out, it's natural to feel a pull, that old desire to reconnect, to see if things might be different this time. But before you rush to respond, remember this truth: your attention is not free. It's not something you hand out simply because someone from your past remembered your name. Your attention carries energy, meaning, and value. It tells people how you see yourself and what kind of treatment you're willing to accept. So when your avoidant ex sends a message, pause and remind yourself they are not entitled to your focus. They have to earn it. It's easy to forget how powerful your attention really is. In relationships, especially ones that left emotional scars, you may have been conditioned to overgive, to always respond, to always be available, to always prove your care. But that's not love, that's self-abandonment. When you give your attention too easily, you teach others that they can disappear, reappear, and still be welcomed without accountability. This time, it's different. You've grown, you've learned that not everyone deserves front row access to your life, especially those who once treated your heart like an option. When an avoidant ex texts, they might be acting on impulse, curiosity, or even guilt. It doesn't necessarily mean they've grown or resolved the patterns that caused distance before. And yet, the moment you respond, you give them your most valuable currency, your energy. That's why discernment is essential. Ask yourself, what have they done to earn my attention? Have they taken responsibility? Have they shown genuine change? Or is this just another moment of them testing the waters to see if you're still there? The truth is, the way you handle this message says more about yourself, worth than your feelings toward them. By taking your time, by not responding immediately, you communicate that your world doesn't revolve around their presence anymore. You show that you have a full life, one that doesn't shrink to make space for uncertainty. You no longer rush to fill the silence or chase closure from someone who once avoided giving it. Your attention is sacred because it feeds whatever you give it to. If you keep feeding confusion, you'll stay confused. If you invest in inconsistency, you'll attract more of it. But when you reserve your energy for what's clear, kind, and consistent, you create room for genuine love to grow. The moment you realize your attention is a privilege, not a right, you stop letting others access it carelessly. So, before replying, take a step back and observe. What does their message offer? Is it substance or surface? Intention or impulse? You owe it to yourself to engage only with people who respect your presence, not just remember it. Every time you choose where your attention goes, you redefine your value. And that is how you transform a simple text into a moment of empowerment. When your avoidant ex decides to break the silence and reach out, it's tempting to let emotion take over, to over-explain, overanalyze, or overinvest in what this message could mean. But here's where your strength lies, in staying calm, composed, and confident. You don't need to prove anything, chase clarity, or dig for meaning between their words. The most powerful response is one that carries quiet confidence. It says, I'm in control of my emotions now, because the goal isn't to impress them or reopen old wounds. It's to show through your tone and energy that you've evolved. When you respond with calmness, you shift the balance immediately. People who avoid intimacy often thrive in emotional intensity, the push and pull, the uncertainty, the chase. But when you meet them with composure, you remove that power dynamic. You're no longer reacting to them. You're responding from your own grounded state. A short, polite, and emotionally neutral reply like, "Hey, I'm doing well, hope you're good too," communicates more than a long, heartfelt message ever could. It shows maturity. It shows control. It shows that their reappearance no longer has the same emotional weight it once did. Confidence doesn't mean coldness. You don't need to ignore them or act indifferent if that's not authentic to you. Confidence simply means yourself. Worth isn't tied to how they behave. Whether they respond again or fade away, you remain unaffected. That energy, calm, sure, and self-contained, is deeply attractive. It tells them that the old version of you, the one who waited for explanations or validation, is gone. You're no longer seeking approval. You're standing in self-assurance. The tone of your response is everything. If you're overly warm or nostalgic, it signals that you're still emotionally open to the past. If you sound cold or defensive, it shows that you're still carrying pain. But when you strike that balance, polite, steady, and unbothered, it sends a message of quiet power. It says you've learned the difference between reacting from hurt and responding from healing. People often believe that saying less makes them seem distant, but in reality, it creates mystery and respect. The calm, concise response communicates boundaries without confrontation. It invites accountability rather than chaos. And if your ex truly wants to reconnect, they'll have to step up their effort. Your composure challenges them to bring more clarity, consistency, and honesty because they now see you as someone who won't settle for vague gestures. The real beauty of calm confidence is that it reclaims your peace. You no longer hand your emotions to someone who once mishandled them. You speak from a place of strength, not scarcity. You no longer chase closure or promises, you embody them. When you stay calm and grounded, you remind yourself and them that your happiness is no longer in their hands. Silence can feel uncomfortable, especially when it's directed towards someone who once mattered deeply. When your avoidant ex reaches out, there's often a strong urge to respond, to fill the space, to ease the tension, to prove that you're kind or forgiving. But silence isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It's the language of boundaries. It's what you use when words would only reopen wounds or blur lines you've fought hard to draw. Sometimes not responding is the most powerful statement you can make because it shows that you no longer engage with half-hearted efforts or emotional confusion. An avoidant ex often sends messages out of curiosity, nostalgia, or guilt, not necessarily with the intention to rebuild something meaningful. They might be testing if the door is still open, if you're still emotionally available, or if you've truly moved on. By choosing silence, you give them their answer without saying a word. You communicate that your peace is more important than reopening a connection that once caused pain. You show that you no longer entertain uncertainty disguised as care. Your silence becomes a mirror reflecting the consequences of their past actions. It takes emotional strength to say nothing. People often equate silence with weakness or avoidance, but in reality, it's a form of self-respect. It's the decision to protect your energy instead of feeding confusion. Not every message deserves a response, especially when it comes from someone who once struggled to be consistent or clear. Engaging again without real accountability can lead you right back into the same cycle of hope and disappointment. Silence breaks that pattern. It tells your ex and yourself that you're no longer available for inconsistency. When you remain silent, you also reclaim your control. The moment you reply, you re-enter a dynamic where they lead the conversation and set the pace. But when you don't respond, you remind them that access to you is not guaranteed. It's earned. You're no longer waiting by your phone, analyzing every word or wondering what they mean. You've learned to sit with the stillness and recognize it as power, not punishment. Silence also creates space for reflection, space for healing, and space for the other person to realize the weight of their actions. It's not about manipulation. It's about allowing reality to speak louder than reassurance. If they truly value you, they'll come back with more clarity and effort. If they don't, then your silence becomes the closure you never received in words. Ultimately, silence sends a message that no text can match. It says you've evolved beyond the need to chase or explain. It says your heart is no longer open to confusion, only to commitment. And while it may feel hard at first, choosing silence over reaction is often the final step in reclaiming your peace. It's the quiet confirmation that you've finally outgrown the chaos. Growth is not just about moving on, it's about transforming the way you see yourself, your relationships, and what you're willing to accept. When your avoidant ex texts you, it's not just a message, it's a test. It's a moment that reveals how much you've learned, how far you've come, and how deeply you've healed. Before, their words might have pulled you back into uncertainty, into wondering what went wrong or hoping for what could still be. But now, honoring your growth means recognizing that you are not the same person who once settled for inconsistency or waited for someone to change. You've spent time understanding your worth, realizing that love should feel steady, safe, and reciprocal. In the past, you might have mistaken emotional highs and lows for passion. You may have excused avoidance as someone needing space or healing, while quietly abandoning your own needs in the process. Growth changes that. It teaches you that love without consistency is chaos, and affection without effort is empty. So when your ex reappears, instead of falling into familiar patterns, you pause. You ask yourself if this interaction aligns with the version of you who now values peace over potential. Honoring your growth also means refusing to shrink back into the person you were when they left. You no longer chase closure or seek validation from the same place that once caused confusion. You understand that healing didn't make you harder, it made you wiser. It taught you to read patterns instead of promises and to measure love by actions, not apologies. This message, no matter how tempting, isn't a sign to reopen the past. It's an opportunity to prove to yourself that you've outgrown it. You see, when you respond from your healed self, your energy shifts. You no longer crave what broke you. You don't need to prove that you're over it. Your composure says it all. You can acknowledge the message without being consumed by it. You can respond or stay silent, but either way, your decision comes from clarity, not confusion. That is growth in motion, when peace feels more fulfilling than drama ever did. True growth is also about compassion, not necessarily for them, but for yourself. You honor everything it took to reach this point, the tears, the realizations, the strength to walk away. You give yourself credit for choosing yourself over comfort. When you honor your growth, you protect it fiercely. You no longer allow anyone, especially someone from your past, to pull you back into a chapter you've already closed. So when that text arrives, don't see it as a door reopening, see it as a mirror reflecting how much you've changed. You are no longer seeking love from avoidance or validation from uncertainty. You've become the person who values peace more than the past. And that is the ultimate proof of growth. In the end, remember that every message from the past is not an invitation to return, but a reminder of how far you've come. You no longer chase clarity from confusion or seek love from uncertainty. You respond, or stay silent, from a place of strength and self-respect. Your peace, your growth, and your worth are your greatest victories, and no text can take that away. Thank you for listening, and may you always choose the version of yourself that knows peace is more powerful than any apology.